So thank you very much for the introduction. And I'd like to welcome you all on the first annual Excel Funds meetup. Basically, I'm here with Agata Hacura, who is head of finance at Onshore Studios.
And I'm here with Magda, Cielecka, the head of production at Onshore Studios. So let's start this presentation with giving you some context of our company. Onshore Studios is a company that was founded 12 years ago. We are now around 180 people. We worked so far on around 20 titles. And we concentrate right now mostly on the AA games with full cycle development and co-development, with Painkiller being the biggest of our titles right now. But before we get to where we are right now, we had our journey of many ups and downs in the projects. So speaking about the downs, I'm going to share with you a story of one of our games, that's GameDev. GameDev was released in 2021. This is a game that was really well received by the players, by the press. It gained us some recognition on the market. It opened the doors for us for many new interesting cooperations and collaborations. So from the business perspective, this project was quite a success. But from the financial perspective, unfortunately, it was quite a failure. We delivered the vertical slice way too late. We had many changes of the scope, and we iterated it many times during the production phase. We didn't have any financial budget to monitor, and we didn't track and analyze the costs regularly. So, 4 years later, the revenues of the project still didn't cover its costs. Does it sound familiar to any of you? I guess it does. And what would have happened if we had the proper budgeting process in place? With the budgeting process, we would be able to answer some of the questions that we had back then, like, do we allocate people optimally to the project? And can we afford additional month of, let's say, testing? Or from the company's perspective, do we have money to pay the salaries of the developers in the coming month? And finally, will the project even pay off? How many copies we need to sell so it pays off? And with budgeting, we would be able to make informed decisions. We wouldn't have to use our gut feeling to answer these questions. And definitely, it would save us some time, some stress, and lots of money. And we learned a lesson, we implemented the budgeting process, and now when we did it, from time to time, we get asked by the developers, why to plan at all if there will be changes the next month or the next quarter? And the developers are right. There will be changes. There are always changes in the development of the games. But planning is only one part of the bigger cycle. We plan, then we perform, so we work on the project. We track what happened. We analyze it. We make decisions based on it. And then we adjust, and again and again. And each element of this process is very important to make decisions, informed decisions. And in our presentation with Magda, we will talk about almost each of these elements, both from financial and production perspective. We will just skip the performance, because it's just the work on the project.
Thank you. So before we do the deep dive into spreadsheets, I would like to share with you some general considerations that you should be mindful of during this talk. So first of all, remember that our point of view is the point of view of a company that went from 60 to 180 people in 5 years. We've started with, 5 years ago, We had projects that were ports or remakes, and right now we are doing AA titles with creative ownership on our site. And lastly, we are doing, well, multiple projects at the same time, and they are in different production phases. So keep in mind, the complexity of the tools and pipelines should fit your company. You should check very often if they are still solving the same problem, because, well, things change dynamically, both in companies and in projects. And also, it's an iterative process. We've had many versions of the files we will be talking about, of the systems we will be talking about, and we are iterating on them still. And also, there is some fake data here, so the names and the numbers are made up. You don't try to make sense of them, you'll just hurt yourself in this confusion. And going to the next important part, some groundwork. There are different types of budgets. And, well, the first one you probably know if you ever started a game and looked for a publisher, for example, will be the estimation for the publisher budget. It's generally very high level. It's broad. It is done at the point in time when we don't know much about what we will be doing. And because of that, it's really updated, and very often it stops being relevant in a quite quick manner. The other one is the operational budget, which is the one that we are working on during the production. So here we have the internal tracking. We need to know how many people are working on the project at a given time. It needs to be updated. This is like the base of what we'll be talking about today. There is also yearly company's budget and, for example, long-term forecast. But those two are more connected to the needs and budget data of the company and less to the projects. So we will be focusing mostly on this one with few instances of mentioning the first, so the estimation for the publisher. Secondly, some roles and some responsibilities. Someone needs to update the roadmap and the team composition. This is usually the executive producer, and, well, at Dunshaw we do it monthly. If you have monthly milestones, it also makes a lot of sense. Here you need project timeline because it's very well connected to the budgeting, and you need also team composition because it's important for the monthly cost, which is important for the budget. Another thing, estimates of the team project backlog. The fact that you are okay with the budget in terms of people working on it month by month doesn't mean that you are on time with work. So without that, you don't really know anything. This is usually the team producer, but of course, if your project is small enough, this is basically the same person as the executive producer. And for us, it depends on the project actually, but after a set cycle of time, it should be updated. Next, outsource budget project. You probably know that voiceovers, translations, software, it all costs, and these are usually costs that are bumps at some time. These also need to be updated. For me, usually the time when we record voiceovers is the one that, changes very often. And going forward, we have the average man month. So this is the info that we get from the finance team. And if you've never come across the term man month, it's basically the month's worth of work. So we have like 2 programmers working for 2 weeks each. It's 1 man month. And last one, employee availability. This is extremely important if you are having huge projects with many people on them, changing teams, but also when you are running multiple projects at the same time. Without it, it's a hellish way to deal with the transfers of people. As for the tools, production Otherwise, you can use some multi-purpose software like Target Process. You can use plugins for Jira, for example, like Big Picture. And of course, you can use good old Microsoft Excel. We will be focusing on Microsoft Excel, of course. And for finance, it's, again, Excel, surprise. But also lots of tools for finance and planning analysis and also business intelligence. Here, we are focusing again on Excel and Power BI. And starting with the plan from the production perspective. First, you need to know what you're doing in terms of what game you are doing and what is the context for making this game. So you need to take your production phases. These are like the, I guess, most common ones right now. And remember that they are each driven with a different goal. And because of that, also they have different number of people during these phases. Then you need to take your milestones, probably in the contract with your publisher, and gates, so this points in time when we are providing an artifact that shows that you can get to another phase of the production. Then you need to add, well, buffer, obviously. It's good to remember that having it in budget and not in time will also hurt. So remember that having a buffer of time is good. Any important industry event that might need a build, a demo, something like that. Year after year, we are surprised that GDC is coming, or PAX, or whatever. Then you cross-reference it with basically a roadmap. So known estimates about huge features. At this point, you don't know much, but you can try to see the relations between them and provide some kind of plan on how we will be working on them, and which ones can be worked on at the same time. And when we know that, we basically can go and crunch some numbers. So you can check how many people of which specialization you will need to deliver said things. As you can probably see, there is like quite a few changes here. During specific phase, these are rather small, but when you are changing from one phase to another, these are usually big jumps. You need to have a ramp-up of people joining the project. And mentioning what I said before, that's quite important when you have different projects on different phases, and you need to somehow contain the chaos of people going from one project to another. And this brings us to the resource allocation. To start with something like that, basically you will need three things. You need to have data on the schedules of your projects or project. You will have to have up-to-date database of your employees. This is usually brought by the financial team or administration team, and you need the tool to visualize it. So here, again, you can have anything from Target Process, Big Picture, to, you guessed it, Microsoft Excel. How it works with us, for us. First, we have input. There is like one Excel file when every project has a tab, and in the tab, the executive producer, but generally inputs the info. So they are choosing the role from the drop-down menu. They are choosing the employee from the drop-down menu, and they are filling in the man-months. The drop-down menu is important because we are working on those specific names of specializations or employees. So if you make a typo, it will be way more difficult to manage. And as you can see, after that we have columns which are the milestones and the months that we need to fill. And each row is a specific record of that. So for example, here we have executive producer from production. That's called Caroline Vogel. As you can see, the names were made up. Then, when every producer does their work and fills the tab, we have the output, which is basically, again, a huge table. But this time, it checks something else. It checks for the allocation for every of the employees. So after cross-referencing that, we see that someone has like overbooking or underbooking for their work. So obviously 100% is good, anything other is not so good. 0 is of course worrisome because it means someone will be sitting on their hands waiting for a task. 200% is also not good because it means 2 projects are needing a specific person. If you have those wonderful, lovely unicorns in your company who everyone loves and that knows that they can solve any problem, they will have like 500% without doubt. This is just a visualization, so we don't work on the specific view, but the main goal here is to show us as soon as possible that there will be a problem. If we see that 6 months from now, we will have 10 people that are without work for 6 months, we can do something about it. We can actually act. On the other side, when we see that both projects are thinking that they're going to get some specialist and probably one of them won't. So this also needs decisions. Connected to that is yet another tab that's mostly for heads. We call it the bench. And here we have basically a list of employees who have no allocation or under 100% allocation each month. So you can see who will be waiting for some tasks and work to be given to them. This has 2 uses, basically. First of all, if you know that in your project you will need some specialist at some specific time, you might look if there is anyone that would be, glad to fill the role. But also, of course, we don't want people sitting on their hands and getting bored or watching YouTube tutorials for 6 months on anything like that. So this is the, let's say, important alert for heads that they need to think about what is going to happen with their employees. Find them some project, maybe staff augmentation, but it needs to be dealt with. It will be terrifying at first. If you do this at a time when you have, like, I don't know, under 12 months to the end of your project, it will probably look horrible, but you can iterate on that and it will be a bit better.
So now, concerning the planning from the financial perspective, let's start with reminding the groups of costs that we have in the project. So, of course, the biggest part of the costs is the personal cost. The personal cost, I mean here only the developer's cost. So no administration, no head of departments, and so on. We put here only the people working on the project. And also we take here their base salaries, but also with all of the taxes, social contributions, and so on. The other group of the costs is the other direct costs. These are here all the outsources, localization, voiceovers, etc. And these 2 groups of the costs, they make the cost directly related to the project. But of course, in the company, we have also the costs that are not project related. These are called the overhead costs. These are the office costs, administration, financing, etc., etc. And in general, the personal cost and the overhead costs, they together are more or less fixed. So they do not change significantly month over month. And this is why at Answer, we use the approach to budget the costs called man-month costing. And man-month costing is combining the personnel cost and overhead costs, the way that we split the overhead cost over the personnel cost. Let me show you this math here visually. So we have the overheads cost, we split them on the personnel cost, and what we get is the overheads margin, and the salary of the person plus the overheads margin is the man-month cost. So then when we add the man-month costs to the other direct costs, we get the total cost of the project. Usually the first group of the costs, the man-month costs, shall be provided to the budget by the finance team, while the other one shall be provided to the budget by the producers with some help of departments if needed. Okay, and at Answer, we approach it this way, that we calculate the man-month cost for each employee, so for each single developer working on each project, but we also calculate it on the general level, split by department, specialization, and seniority level. So, for example, we know exactly what's the average man-month cost of, let's say, junior lighting artist or senior level designer. And this is because usually you do not know, you cannot identify from the beginning of the project each single person that will work on it. And it's important to know your man-month cost on the general level. So it's good to know what's the average man-month cost in your company, because it helps a lot the company's owners or the biz devs to quickly estimate the initial cost of the whole project. So, for example, if you know that you will need, let's say, 500 man-months working on the project, you know your average man-month cost, you multiply one by the other, and you quickly get what's more or less the cost of the project. Then it's easier to benchmark yourself against the other companies on the market, especially the Western studios use this as their internal rate, so you can position yourself against them. And knowing the man-month cost on the employees level helps especially the producers to better allocate people to the project. And also in the work-for-hire projects, it helps you to analyze if the fee that you get from the client covers your internal costs. But we haven't been that smart still 1 year ago. I'm going to tell you a story about one of our projects. So 1 year ago, we budgeted the project with the personnel costs detailed only to the specialization level. So we budgeted the cost, for example, of a 3D artist, the cost of the programmer, the cost of the producer. So we didn't take into account their seniority levels. And in the first phase of the project, we needed high-skilled professionals. And as you may imagine, the high-skilled professionals, these are people with the higher seniority levels. So these are people who have higher salaries. So in consequence, we missed the budget by 15% already in the first 3 months of the project. So we learned the lesson to use the appropriate level of details, and now at Answer we calculate the man-months for each single employee as well, and we budget it with these costs. Now, putting aside the personnel costs, let me tell you something about the cash flow aspects of the projects, of the budgets. So, of course, when we have the personnel costs, this is the biggest group. So the other direct costs that I mentioned earlier, like the localization, outsource, voiceovers, etc., these costs usually do not make a big part of the whole budget of the project. But when they already happen, they can be really significant in this given moment. So the last thing that you want to do as the producer is to surprise your management board with $200,000 that you need to pay next month for, let's say, localization services. So as the producer, you need to put this cost in the budget well in advance. And the other thing that's quite obvious, that as the producers, you are required to deliver the milestones on time, but it's important to remember that this can also have a cash flow impact, especially if you have a publisher paying for the milestones and accepting them, because sometimes even 1 or 2 weeks of delay in accepting the milestone may mean that the company does not have money to pay for the salaries of the people. Now, from the technical side, when we have already all the costs identified, so we know the personal cost and the other direct costs, we put them all together in the budget. Usually, it can be an Excel file. So we have an Excel file with the allocation of the people. Ideally, if this file calculates automatically the total personnel costs, then we put there the other direct costs, and based on this, we get the total view of the project. We see how it's gonna go, if it's gonna be profitable or not, if you have revenues in there already. And these print screens here are from a budget template that we have created with Magda, especially for this presentation. So at the end of our speech, there will be a QR code. You can download this Excel file and feel free to use it and adjust it as you need it. Okay, but at Answer, we switched recently a little bit the approach. We still use Excel files as the source of data. We use the file with the employee database. We use the people allocation file that Magda was talking about earlier. And we use different companies' budgets. But we combine them all together, and we automatically calculate all the data, all the cost of the project in the Power BI. Okay.
Thank you. So we will be skipping performance because nothing wrong ever happens there. And we will be talking about tracking and analyzing. First, again, from production perspective. And of course, we will start with tracking what's done and what needs to be done. Well, first of all, if you've never estimated a task during your work and you're a producer, well, I respect you, but I'm also scared of you. Secondly, it's not so hard to start. So, small steps. You don't need to do estimates or planning poker, or know what story point is, or use t-shirt sizes or Fibonacci sequence or anything. You can just have the number of tasks that was supposed to be finished and the number of tasks you actually finished in your team. Then, if you want to go pro, you can add like man weeks as the way to estimate it, man days. It really depends on the size of the tasks, basically, and how you are tracking your sprints, milestones, whatever. So here's an example how you can do this. As you can see, we have specific sprints. We have specific features that are from different areas. And we can see what happens with man weeks that are estimated that we need to do before we are done. So sometimes it goes down, which is good, and sometimes it goes up, which shouldn't happen. And basically, when you start looking at the data from this point of view, you will see that there are stories there. And usually, these are the ones that you need to dig into as a producer to know what is happening. It's good to measure it in each cycle, so you see also the trends that are happening there. And take note of all the factors that might have influenced the team's velocity. That is basically the speed of burning the tasks. Talking about that, you can, of course, having this velocity and knowing the average, the minimal velocity, the maximal velocity of the team, you can assess what's the most probable best case scenario in terms of time or worst case scenario in terms of time. Here is like quite easy because it's between like half a week and a week, but sometimes it stretches like for, let's say, the difference is in months, or sometimes it's bigger. The second thing, if you're trying to visualize this info, you will also see that there is, for example, in this case, something happening here, right? The area A is doing pretty well, but around sprint 3, something very, very wrong happened with area C. Technically, we have like the same amount of work done, but the type of tasks changed, so probably it needs some digging. Then, if you know that, you can also use something that's, well, it's usually called a burn down chart. This is the most classical way of visualizing the work being burned down in the sprint. And this is the same table from the previous slide. So as you can probably see, it looks quite similar to the previous chart, and also has this strange moment in sprint 2 and sprint 3, where it looks like no work was done. You, from the previous chart, see what probably happened here. Sometimes it's not so obvious. So, for example, personally, I'm always a huge fan of a burn-up chart because it also tracks what's happening to the backlog. And as you can see here, the team is working quite consistently, but also the number of tasks that need to be done is going up consistently. So the problem is still there, it's just not in the team. Unfortunately, best visualizations and reports won't help if, well, no one reads them and no decisions are made based on them. So what we are using at Anshul Studios is an executive sync meetings. These are the monthly held meetings for each project. When we are discussing those reports, those risks, we are mainly there to assess whether we should take some action or not. And when I say we, I mean, well, the people who are in the room where it happens, which is the executive producer. I can actually do this. Executive producer, head of finance, head of studio, and head of production. So, yeah. Sorry, Basia, that you're having a beard here. During these meetings, we often see kinds of problems that need to be also bring up because they're more, let's say, they're bigger than the specific project for us. But very often we can also have a decision on during the meeting and start acting.
Okay, now moving to the tracking and analyzing from the financial perspective. We're going to start with the tools that we use at Anshul for this. So again, the source data. Here we use an Excel file with the final allocation of people to the project. And we use the real data from the accounting system, all the costs, everything what happened in the company in the previous months. And we combine everything again automatically in the Power BI. And from there, we get different views of what happened, different points and angles of the costs, and we can analyze it easily there. So, budget, when you have a budget is just a budget. Then we have the reality. And usually the reality is different from the budget, so we have some difference between the actual cost and the budgeted cost. And don't guess what happened in the project, just try to analyze it. So based on this, you can be much more well-informed about what happened there. So usually we analyze the actuals against the budget zero, so the first budget that was created for the publisher or before the project started, and against each major budget update, so usually against each bigger milestone. And what are we looking for? So we're looking for obviously for the cost variances. This is when the cost differs. So for example, the salary is higher or lower than what's expected. The resource variances, it's when we've put more or less people to the project than expected. And the time variance, so when the task took longer or shorter than planned. And the scope variance, it's when something, if the tasks that were expected happened or not, or there were some other tasks that the developers did. And these two first variances can be easily found and identified by the finance team, while the other ones need to be found by the producers. So again, it's important that the finance team works closely with the producers on that. Okay, so when we have this budget and the actuals and the difference between them, usually the difference is not caused by only one type of variance, but by a combination of different variances. So it's good to look for each of them. And what not to do when you look for the differences, when you try to analyze them. So you cannot focus solely on the numbers, because sometimes the negative variances can be also good. So you need to look for the story behind the numbers. Then it's also bad to ignore the positive variances. Positive variances are when the actual costs were lower than the planned ones. At the first glance, it may seem that it's good that the costs were lower, but in fact, this may mean that you have some delay that will catch up later. You cannot also ignore the small but repetitive variances, because they may add up later. But here, don't overlook these small variances. You just need to find some balance in this. And last but not least, analyzing too late is, of course, the bad thing, because then you do not have time to make the decisions.
Yes, and talking about decisions and adjusting after making those, this will be actually not from the production perspective, but both of our perspectives. So let's start with some important things to remember. First of all, your forecast will always be wrong. There is not a possibility to have a good forecast. If you ever had a forecast that went according to plan, you're very lucky, try the lottery. We do this because things change and we cannot foresee everything. So the single plan that you have is basically meaningless. The process of planning, the process of adapting to that is the thing that really matters, and it's the thing that brings the project home. Now, if you do everything we said before correctly, which we rarely do, personally, you'll have early problem detection and informed decision-making and improved forecasting. Again, forecast will always be wrong, but I wanted to, maybe you remember at the beginning of the talk, Agata said about developers saying that, well, we have a plan, but after a month it's not valid anymore. Well, from my experience, it's basically we had a plan and it's not valid on the other day or an hour after the planning. I'm not sure if you had the same experience. So having better budgeting and better tracking will probably push that day to a week or maybe a month. Case study. We had a project that was a contract with a publisher and was negotiated only for the proof of concept. The duration was 8 months and around 90 man-months there. The deal was that after we show the proof of concept, and if it's good, we will go to the next stages to sign another deal. We very soon realized that we'll miss the client's expectation, and we needed to act. We made this deliberate decision to increase the project's team. So we added 15 man-months to this. And, that basically cut our margins to 0. But we signed the deal. So what's important here, and you should remember, is that it's way, way better to base your decisions on data and not on your gut. We here knew exactly how many man-months we can add for the projects to be better, but still not going into the territory when we are actually paying for this project. As for the typical challenges you will meet when trying to have a plan that will unfortunately fall down, it's basically two things. There might be internal factors and external factors. The first ones are, well, let's say inside the company is too much of a generalization, but it might be the speed of generally your hiring process. It might be letting go of an employee, some kind of conflicting needs of a different project. And on the other side, external factors are things outside. So, for example, someone getting sick, or someone quitting, or maybe the publisher decided to change the scope or the timeline, or maybe the budget. What's important to remember here is in the first case, you have some level of control. You might try to mitigate. You will probably have better chance of foreseeing that kind of factors, especially if on all of your projects, on all of your teams, you're trying to track and analyze. And in the case of external factors, it's way, way harder. Usually, it's almost impossible to foresee. It's very hard to prevent and mitigate, so you can only brace yourself and have a buffer for it. If you'd like to hear more about buffer in production, I really recommend this talk by Hacura that was made, as I believe, a year ago on Digital Dragons also. Going to the final key takeaways. We do this because we want to make better decisions. This is the goal here. We will need to make decisions, things will change. We cannot do anything about it, but good decisions are useful. So that's the first thing. Secondly, you should adjust your tool. And this means, actually both cases. The first case being, if you are taking the process of tools or anything from another company or even another project, it might not work for you the way you intended it to. They need to be adjusted, but also remember companies change. Sometimes it's small enough of a change that you won't notice it, but it might happen that after a year or two, the processes you have are not working well. Next, more detailed data is great, but it needs automatization. It's great to work on that kind of set of data, but someone needs to input it. And if these are like few Excel files and many tabs and someone needs to do it, they'll probably get frustrated very easily, stop doing it at a specific frequency that we need, and we will have outdated info on our projects and the budget. And finally, finance and production need to work closely together, both in maintaining those and also with iterating and finding new ideas how we can upgrade what we have. Thank you. Here is the template, QR code.
Yes. Thank you very much, ladies. And now it's time for questions and answers. Yes. If you have any questions, the microphone stands in front of the stage. And please also download this QR code. Do not hesitate to download it, and do this through the official Digital Dragons application. Otherwise, it won't work.
This one will.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hey, thank you for your speech. My question is, what do you think is ideal length of the milestone, how to estimate it? Because I think a lot of developers miss this point, because the short milestones and long milestones comes with different challenges. For example, short milestones could be more secure financially, but the team could focus on deliverables, and in case of iterations or pivoting small features, it could lead to delays.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very good question. We had this problem specifically, and what we are doing now while signing the contracts, we have something that we call interim milestones. So these are the ones when we basically commit to, update the publisher on the state of the work that's being done, but we don't have specific deliverables set in stone for those milestones. So, for example, every 3 milestones we have, this huge artifact-based, deliverables-based, let's say, milestone review, but anything in between that is, more loose, so the team can focus on iterations and working on the project. And maybe I need to add this, we are still being paid monthly in this setup.
How do you schedule? You said about it, but about tasks. But how do you schedule that? It's 1 week or 2 weeks or half a week or 0.7 week? What's the method?
So this is a tough one. It really depends on the project and on the team. When you have experienced developers, they will probably have an idea how much time something will take. Of course, sometimes things happen, and you cannot, foresee everything. But the knowledge is there. Usually, my way of dealing with developers that say that they don't know how much something will take, I'm saying like, oh, so 2 days. And they are very enraged, and they say, look, what, 2 days? It's like about a month. And I'm like, okay, so it's a month. Well, maybe 3 weeks. So challenging them helps. But also, if you've worked with them a lot in the process of planning, if it's not the production doing the planning, but it's team effort, they will be better at estimating their work, and it'd be a bit easier to do.
Okay, we've got no more questions. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing.